Welcome in to Halifax Sports Talk. It's Thursday, January 22nd. This is your weekend preview. Andrew and Dayton with you. We'll have Jeremy Keefe with us in just 1 second. But as much as I say, Dayton, it's our weekend preview, it feels a little bit like a recap today here on the show, as there's lots to mention for both the Thunderbirds and the Wanderers as far as trades, signings, and news across both of those teams. So a lot to get to, a lot to talk about. Wanderers, Thunderbirds, and Mooseheads. We got the trio of teams to break down here on the show today. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. Like you said, there is a game tonight, which we do have to preview, but there's been so much stuff going on in the world of sports in Halifax this past week. So let's bring Jeremy in and let's get right to it with some Thunderbirds talk.
What's up, Jeremy?
Hey, guys. How we doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. Ready to talk some Thunderbirds and have you kind of break down these moves for us and give us a little midpoint of the season breakdown.
Sure. I mean, like you said, there's a lot going on. You know, the Thunderbirds might not have a game this weekend, but still plenty has happened in the last few days. So lots to talk about. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a really good time for, maybe they don't have a game like you said, but it's still a really good time for us to be speaking about them, not just standings wise, but of course trades wise and moves wise with the team overall. Before we get to the trade that kind of stunned the Halifax fan base here a little bit, let's just talk conceptually overall about this team, what we've seen. I know you and I had a good chat when Dayton was away. We talked with the three of us multiple times, of course, over the past handful of weeks about this team. But overall, what have you seen so far? The record right now, 3-4 on the season. We'll try and, not have that recency bias hat on, but teams like to progress, not regress. And right now, from my perspective, a lot of what we've seen has been a little bit of regression. What do you see so far about this team after they played 7 games?
Well, for sure, I'd agree with that. I mean, coming out to start the season 2-0, especially against the champs, the Buffalo Bandits, Halifax Thunderbirds fans probably had, we're thinking they had a lot to be happy about and a lot to look forward to. And the wheels have kind of come off since then. I mean, they did have that one win against Ottawa, which was huge in that 2-game road swing through Ontario week or two ago. But that's it. 3 wins, now 4 losses, including the most recent one being to the Colorado Mammoth at home last weekend. It was a good game. I mean, it was a back and forth game. I think they both stayed off the score sheet for the first quarter. And then Colorado started to come alive and Halifax sort of had to play catch up. The main guys who were always doing it, Randy Stotts, Clark Peterson, and Cody Jamieson, they're still playing really well. You're seeing a lot of point totals out of those guys. Stotts, I think, he's bringing down another 5-point game in that one, 14 shots on goal. So, I mean, he's an offensive weapon, and he's always dangerous when he's on the floor. Peterson would be another similar one, right? I think he had 3 goals, or at least 3 points in that game. These are guys who are producing, maybe not at the absolute top of the league, but they're pretty close to it. So Halifax is lucky to have a couple of guys like that. But for whatever reason, things have just not completely gelled in the last couple of weeks. And like I said, there's just one win out of the last 5 games or so, right? After starting the season 2-0. So yeah, it's getting a little tricky at this point where we're sort of hitting the midpoint of the season. The Thunderbirds management might be thinking about making some changes, as we've seen here this week, and trying to bolster that lineup and fill some of the holes that maybe they thought were missing. So, some big moves. I guess that's what we'll talk about next, and what maybe that could do for the rest of the Halifax Thunderbirds season.
Yeah, well, you just mentioned those big moves, and the first one was Dawson Theede, and we were all kind of talking before we were recording. He's a big name, and he's been producing. He's been up there with guys like Stotts, Jamieson, Peterson, but he was kind of in the bubble or on the fence, some would say, and he just kind of had to, or he was the one that drew the short straw. Is this just a move to kind of make room, or is this? I don't know what they're doing, actually, because it's interesting. they could be going out, like I said, to grab some draft capital with these extra picks and then package them all into a deal. But I want to get your thoughts on this, Jeremy, and see what you think of all these moves.
If this was the NHL or the NFL and a team had dealt one of their top stars, there'd be a press conference pretty soon after, and the coach, the general manager, those guys would be answering those questions. Unfortunately, with the NLL, we don't really see that kind of stuff too much. So maybe until we get an interview, at the game, at the next game or something like that, we're not really going to know exactly what they're thinking by making a move like that. So Dawson Theede was, there's Stotts, there's Peterson, there's Jameson, there's Theede right there, right? He was producing for the Thunderbirds. So this isn't like they've dealt somebody who, wasn't really making much of an impact this year. He was every bit one of the top players. So letting him go means that I would think that management for the Thunderbirds are trying to really shake some things up. Now, as you mentioned, they've got a whole bunch of picks now because they got a first round pick out of that deal. So that means they've got 3 for this upcoming draft, 3 first round picks. And then in 2028, they've got 2 first round picks also. So, I mean, right there, that's 6 first round picks in the next 3 drafts. Are they going to use all of them? I'm not sure. Maybe they're going to take 1 or 2 or a few of them and move those around to try and get some people back, because right now that's a bit of a hole, right? Dawson Theede leaving the team and not getting anybody immediately to fill in doesn't bode well for the rest of the season, I wouldn't think. Now, they did go ahead and sign, a veteran who has played for the Thunderbirds before, Stephen Keogh. I mean, that's a good signing, right? We might be, seeing him try and move into, take up some of that space that Theede had been. So maybe that's kind of their thinking, is that they could bring him on rather than trade Theede for someone. Sort of like, that's kind of what their solution for that would be. That remains to be seen. I mean, Keogh is a guy the Halifax fans know pretty well, and they'll be excited to see him back on the floor at the Nest for sure. But yeah, when you come out strong, 2-0 to start the season, then you have a bit of a skid after that, you end up 3-4, and then you deal one of your top players. It doesn't really bode well for the rest of the season, does it?
No, not at all. I mean, I think the biggest shock too, I like what you said there about the press conference stuff, like how you kind of hold that when you get rid of a player, or there's like a general manager will speak, if we saw a player in football trade their quarterback or a star point guard, or, your top scorer in the NHL, whatever it might be, gets moved, it makes a big difference. But as Dayton stated, like, you kind of maybe draw the short straw. It's like, hey, we got a couple guys, and then there was you. But then there's also the personal stuff. Like, I thought he had an attachment to the city, of course, but maybe, they've gotten to see Oshawa play twice, right? So you get to see this team already. They were just there, so the scouts, the team, the management, they got to see him play, and they make the move. But I like what you guys are saying here. Maybe there's a positive to come at the end of the tunnel here, where there's more to come, because you're stocking up on picks. This is a team that was very close to going all the way here, Jeremy. Is this a team that really needs to be, loading up on picks for the future here? I mean, I get they've gone through a tough lull here, but I feel like this team's going to be just fine. So you think there's going to be something going forwards here? The last time I asked you when we were on the podcast if you're more concerned about their offense or defense, after watching that last game, what would you say the biggest hole is right now? I know that's a 1-game sample size, but what do you think this team is missing overall right now? What part of their game are they struggling with the most?
Well, what it could be is that management is thinking that, in that long term, like picture is what they're missing. As much as Cody Jamieson is producing at a fairly high level, right? He's still got point totals that are rivaling a lot of people in the league. And he's been around for forever, it seems. He's not going to continue to be around forever. So maybe they're thinking that this could be a way that they usher in a new chapter for Halifax by getting a number of first round picks and building a younger team. I mean, we saw McLeod come on a couple of weeks ago and have a huge game. He's brand new. Maybe that's a guy that in the next couple of years they start to build that franchise around, along with some other picks. So that could be it. I think that the offense is pretty good. I mean, the guys we mentioned before, Stotts and Peterson and Jameson as well, they're producing on offense, but maybe not to a level where you go, wow, these guys are scoring so much. Any team that's coming to the Nest or that they're visiting in an away game is going to have to put a number of balls behind Hill or Hutchison if they want to be competitive, right? Like the guys who we're talking about are producing at a pretty good level, but they're not over the top, right? It's not like you're seeing them all near the top 10 in terms of points or goals scored. So those guys are doing pretty well on offense. And I see the kind of same thing out of the defense as well. They're not giving up a whole lot of chances, right? They're pretty tough keeping those, their opponents from getting fast breaks sort of things. The goaltending has been pretty good. I know that Hill and Hutchison have split the last 2 games, and they've played pretty much similar, right? Similar number of saves, similar number of goals against in those two. I think maybe the team, the management is trying to, get a handle on, what the goaltending situation is going to be, how the defense can support them a little bit better. So right now it's hard for me to say whether the offense is the key, the defense is the key, or one of those is kind of like, what's contributed the most to this skid that they've been on. I think that generally both sides of the ball, they're pretty middle of the pack at the moment. I wouldn't say that there's any glaring thing that needs to be changed. This will like that does, that's a comment that I'm making with Dawson Theede, being in the lineup though. Losing him, if somebody isn't stepping up, then I could see the offense kind of taking a hit here going forward. But we'll see what happens, right? We still have Stotts, Peterson, but yeah, it's going to be a loss with Theede going out the door, and it certainly doesn't help with their firepower. And the Thunderbirds haven't been scoring quite in the same way that they were to start the season. So that could be a tricky one for Halifax. And you had mentioned that, they already had a couple of games against Oshawa and split them. When we talked about this before the season started, I said, it'd be kind of a good idea to have a team like that, not too far away from Halifax. It's the Firewolves, the Thunderbirds, we could have a nice rivalry. But then when you deal one of your best players to it, it's like, well, you shouldn't do that with a rival. So I don't know, maybe we'll have to find a different rival. But also, as we were talking about, those guys are really gelling because they came out in the last game against Halifax. They looked really good, and they're going to look even better with Theede in their lineup. So, I see big things for the rest of Oshawa's season, and I'm hoping to be optimistic about the rest of Halifax's season. And certainly about their future here with all those draft picks for sure. But it is at a point right now where it's kind of hard to say what it is that Halifax is going to need to improve on, what they, are doing best, and where things go from here. So, until we get back on the floor, and it won't be this weekend, it's hard to say with Halifax. We're going to kind of see a new Halifax Thunderbirds here to start what's, getting close to the midpoint of the season.
Well, Jeremy, you did end up, getting to see the Georgia Swarm in your neck of the woods out in Alberta. As much as people might not know, Jeremy is actually not even in the same province as us right now. Jeremy's out in Alberta, but you do still get to tune into a bunch of NLL, and you got to see some live NLL the other day. It was Georgia and Calgary. Am I correct?
That's right. Yeah. And that's right. So I do live in Edmonton now, but believe me, I'm born and raised in Halifax. And that's why I wear the purple so proudly for Halifax. Right. And when they come out to Calgary here in about a month at the end of February to take on the Roughnecks, I'm going to make the 3-hour drive down so that I can cheer on my team. So yes, let's get that out of the way. I don't live in Halifax anymore, unfortunately. But, I used to for most of my life, and I love everything about the Thunderbirds, and that's why, I stay so passionate and I follow them so closely. But when there's NLL lacrosse in my city, I'm going to go. And the Georgia Swarm and the Calgary Roughnecks played at Rogers Place last week, and it was a pretty interesting game. Yeah, is the Roughnecks, were definitely the home team favorite. There was a decent amount of people wearing Roughnecks gear, and maybe they're Edmonton fans of the Calgary team. Maybe they came from Calgary just to see their team play in a different barn. I'm not sure, but it was definitely it was a pretty good turnout for the Roughnecks in terms of their fan base. Not so much for what happened on the floor, though. I think it was 6-0 before Calgary could put one in, and a few seconds after that, with like 3 seconds left in the first quarter, Georgia made it 7-1. So 7-1 going into the second quarter. The Swarm were absolutely dominant, and this wasn't like a close game that they just weren't getting the bounces. Georgia can score. A guy like Lyle Thompson, who is a former first overall pick in the NLL, he's been an MVP. Same thing, I think, also in the MLL. So this is an elite player, and he came away with like 10 points. So there's other guys. Brian Cole, 8 points, and with a game that ended 19-9, and that was just with Calgary scoring, I think, 6 in the final quarter. Like going into the fourth quarter, this game was way over, and I came away from it thinking, this is who Halifax has to take on next. Like, this could be tough. We need really strong defense out of Hossack. We need people like Jake Withers to be just all over those loose balls, because Georgia plays a fast game. And when they get the chance to go on offense, and this isn't often, set up and take a shot like you see in like maybe hockey or basketball or something like that. They play a fast game. They are looking at the guy breaking all the time, the guy coming out of the front door of the bench, and they are just scoring at will. So I'm not saying that I think they could put 19 behind Hill or Hutchison like they did with Calgary, but they can definitely fill the net. They know what it takes to score. And Halifax, we'd love to see them get back in the win column. They're in deep against Georgia. I mean, right now they're 3-3. Halifax is 3-4. They're looking like they're pretty much right around the same area in terms of the standings. But this is a team that they are no slouch. I was very impressed watching Georgia the other night, and yeah, I mean, I'll be watching the game when they do take on Halifax here next week, and be very interested to see how they stack up against them. I do think Halifax is better than Calgary. I like I said, I don't see them letting in 19. I don't see them losing by 10 goals. But that's going to be a tough game, and it's going to be a fun game as well. So yeah, it's going to be at home. So that's another good thing. And I was also going to mention, though, too, for a lot of Halifax fans, right? Because there's been a lot of away games recently, and there's a lot coming up after this one. NLL Plus, you can sign up for free on the NLL website. This isn't a plug. They're not paying me to say this. It's just, I think maybe if some people aren't aware, if they see that it's not on TSN, then they go, oh, there's nowhere to watch it. NLL Plus has a lot of the games, not all of them, but a lot of the games, and including this one. So if you are out of town, you don't have tickets, if it's sold out, something like that, go on NLL.com and sign up for NLL Plus, and you can stream the game live. And I think they've got 3 games that night or something like that. So if you're a lacrosse fan and you haven't signed up for that, I don't know what you're waiting for. That's like the perfect way to stay on top of the league.
Love it. My final question for you was going to be just, how they're stacking up right now, this Thunderbirds team, with the league overall. I don't want to bring out the excuses here, but I think it is fair to say, looking at, Saskatchewan, who took them down twice, they got 88 goals for. They're leading the league. Colorado second in goals for, second in the league, but they're number one, one of the best teams as far as defensive numbers are concerned. You look at even Ottawa. I mean, people have been impressed with them. 86 goals for. So can we make a little bit of excuses, at least with the schedule that they've faced? And just your overall thoughts. You already mentioned their next opponent, but just on their schedule coming up. I love to forecast. I love to take a look at, the next 2 or 3 games, next 4 games, how a team's going to do. And I remember in the gambling world, I used to do a segment for hockey called Buy and Sell, which teams I'm buying, which teams I'm selling for the next, handful of games here. And for this Thunderbirds team, are you buying or selling their schedule coming up?
A little bit of both, but I would lean towards the buying. You hear a lot in the NFL that people talk about strength of schedule, and we had talked about this early on, right? They were taking on Oshawa, who we were saying, okay, that's a new team, that's not too bad. But after that, you've got the champs, and then you've got back to back against Saskatchewan, who is a team that, like we've talked about also, for whatever reason, just always seems to have Halifax's number. And then it didn't really slow down too much after that. And that's why we saw Ottawa's another good team. And then firing on all cylinders, Oshawa, and even Colorado played well. I mean, my hat's off to them, from that game recently. Now, coming up, we've got the Swarm, who we just talked about are very high-powered offensive team, and they're going to be tough, on Halifax. Right after that, it's another rematch against the champs with Buffalo. So Buffalo is on a little bit of a skid themselves, but they're every bit as good as they've ever been, I would think. They've got guys who can still put the ball in the net at will. So we've got two tough games coming up. After that, though, things should they should get a little bit lighter of a schedule after that. So there's San Diego Seals, there's Calgary Roughnecks, who I mentioned. I love them, but they are not having the greatest season. Las Vegas Desert Dogs are another kind of mid-pack team, and then after that, then the Toronto Rock, who are always tough. So we're looking at two tough games here. One against one, team that we were able to beat already, and then. We do take a little bit of a dip in terms of the caliber of teams that we're getting used to playing against. So if you ask buy and sell, I say right now, hold. And then in a couple of games, it's a big time buy, because it's a few games that Halifax should come away with the majority in the win column, if you ask me. So a couple of tough matchups with Georgia and Buffalo, then some easier ones, hopefully, after that. And depending on how things go with Kehoe getting in the lineup, I want to see, McLeod as well, right? He came out so strong in that first game. He's kind of backed off a little bit, but I think that maybe now moving Theede out, maybe they've got plans for a guy like him to make him a little bit more of an offensive threat. Definitely not selling on Halifax. And we'll see here after this week, where they've got a week off, which is a well-deserved rest, because they've been on a bit of a tear. That 2-game swing through Ontario, another one this past weekend. They've earned a rest, and then they're back Saturday, January 31st at the Nest, taking on the Georgia Swarm. It's going to be a good game, man. Halifax fans are going to be excited for that one for sure.
Tickets are flying off the shelf for that one. Tickets are flying, Dayton. I'm seeing it's tough time to get a seat right now for that game.
Dude, it's insane right now. Actually, tickets are flying off the any sporting event in Halifax right now. I think ever since the PWHL rolled through here, fans have been wanting Halifax sports. I looked at the Mooseheads tickets for tonight, and they're already sold out.
Crazy. Yeah. Loyal fan group. Love to see it.
Yeah.
Yes. That's awesome. Yeah. Some of the best fans in the country for sure are hanging out in Halifax, and they're just clamoring for, any kind of good professional sports, whatever comes through, they're going to support it. Right. So like I said, some of the best fans the country has.
100%. We talked about getting some rest. Jeremy, we didn't let you get any rest. We definitely appreciate you giving us the breakdown on everything going on this weekend, and a little bit of next weekend's matchup as well. No score prediction, because like we said, no matchup this week, but we hope for you to get the best week off, and we'll wait for that score prediction in 2 weeks' time or a week's time.
Yeah, I'll be back next week, and I'm sure there'll be some developments between now and then, right? We'll see. Maybe the Thunderbirds make some more signings or some more moves. I'm sure there'll be plenty for us to talk about ahead of that game against Georgia, which, like I said, it's going to be on NLL Plus. So, I won't be missing that one. I'll be glued to the screen for that one too.
Sounds good. Well, Jeremy, take care and have a good one.
All right. Thanks, guys. All the best.
Guys, Jeremy with us every single week, every single Thursday. You can catch him joining us for some Thunderbirds and NLL breakdowns. He knows it best, and he's going to fill us in every single week. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about. Just kind of a little season recap, what we've seen so far. And then Dawson Theede gets traded. Nobody really saw that coming. But Dayton, we got to keep this show on the road. We got to keep the train on the tracks here. I think we might as well get to Mooseheads, then we'll get to Wanderers here. I'm excited because you mentioned the hot ticket. I was talking about hard to get a ticket so far. Kind of funny, running a Mooseheads podcast with you, and it's my first game tomorrow night that I'll be in attendance for. So very, very excited. I'm going to that one. Got some good seats and going to be locked in. So we got 2 games, and one of them against kind of an out-of-town team, but one of them going to be in tough. Thursday night, they start things off, though. What do you think about this matchup?
Well, Thursday night matchup, heading down up the highway, I guess, to Cape Breton. It'll be interesting. We've seen this matchup a few times this season, and both teams are pretty even, so it'll be a good test. Maybe the Mooseheads can get back on track and get back in the win column because they definitely need a couple points. This is one that can start a good weekend for them because they've got 3 straight games here and 2 Quebec teams coming in to try and steal points from them, but it'll be all good if the Mooseheads can start off the weekend with a win here tonight.
Well, the last time these teams played, it wasn't exactly pretty, but I think that we've seen some interesting score lines between these teams where it's been 5-1 for the Eagles, then 5-2 for the Mooseheads. But one thing that has been a common thing when these two teams go head to head is high scoring contests. And we've kind of talked about it with this Halifax Mooseheads team. And I touched on it on our show to start the week, is that we kind of want to see a defensive effort. We need to see, a couple lower scoring games be involved here. I know junior hockey has changed. I mean, typically teams that are coming out on top, we're seeing 3, 4, 5 goals, but I would just love when I look at this Mooseheads team in this one against the Eagles to see a good lockdown defensive game. As mentioned, looking at the standings right now in the Eastern Conference, the Eagles currently in 4th with a record of 17 and 15, but we've got this Mooseheads team, 14 wins, 4 losses, 17 losses. 4 losses in overtime, 17 losses overall. The way they have this these standings is absolutely pitiful. But just 1 win overall in their last 5 games for the Halifax Mooseheads, and the same thing goes for the Cape Breton Eagles. So a big game for both these teams. And then, as you talked about, some Quebec teams coming to town as well, and that's the game that I'll be in attendance for. Look forward to that one. The Sherbrooke Phoenix will be in town, and this is one of those games here where we've talked about it, looking at the standings. When you take a look overall, is this a game that's going to be against the team that's kind of going through the similar stuff that they're going through? Looking at goals for, looking at goals against, looking at the average age of the team. This is one of those games. I know that, this could be a really big 2-game set, Thursday, Friday night for the Halifax Mooseheads. What have you seen so far with Sherbrooke? I'm looking at some of their numbers, looking at some of their past couple games here. I have seen some struggles, and I do think that, giving up 6 against Shawinigan the first time out, 4 the last time, a 10-piece against Drummondville. This is a team that leaks goals, leaks shots on goal against. Maybe it's a team on Friday night the Halifax Mooseheads could take advantage of. So I'm hoping for a successful weekend for the Halifax Mooseheads. I believe that the way the schedule is setting up, they could take advantage of a good weekend. We'll see what happens.
It'll be interesting. Like you said, they gave up a 10-piece to Drummondville. Drummondville comes in to Halifax on Sunday, so hopefully that doesn't happen to Halifax. Hopefully it's a little bit of a closer game. We all know what happened last time these two teams faced off. Actually, both of these teams. Well, I guess I shouldn't say the last time, but the last time I saw Sherbrooke come into town, it was in the 2023 playoff run when Halifax eventually they won game 5. I believe it was game 5, went to Sherbrooke for game 6. Nope, other way around. They won game 6, went to Sherbrooke for game 7. So, no, I was correct the first time, 5-6. But either way, that was when Jacob Melanson, that series, former Amherst native, put up a hat trick against Halifax, and now they're going for the second game. They'll play Drummondville. They came in and almost upset the Mooseheads last year in the playoffs, but the Mooseheads actually pulled off a bigger upset after they went up 2-0. Drummondville came back, tied the series. I don't know if they've had too many meetings. I think it's only the one meeting they've played this season. Drummondville obviously got the better of them, but it goes to show that the Mooseheads can hang around, and if they can hang around with the two big teams coming in this weekend, then it'll be good and good for the confidence moving forward as well, because I don't know if this team has much left to shake up. You know what I mean? There isn't much more for moves to be made. They're really just getting down to the wire, and things have to change quick here for Halifax.
Let's move on to the Wanderers as we just cross our fingers and hope for a really good weekend, although a busy weekend for the Halifax Mooseheads. I'll snap some pics. We'll be posting. I'll be tweeting from the account. You guys can follow along with me. It's kind of funny. Again, I've been watching the games on Flow Hockey. I've been tuning in hardcore to the Moose games this year, but first game in attendance, so looking forward to that. But turning the page to the Halifax Wanderers. And it's that time of year, Dayton, where we're going to start having some news come out. And this is where it starts to get fun, because a lot of people don't realize how early training camps actually start for the Halifax Wanderers. You and I are going to try and get in the mix, boots on the ground, talk to some of the players. We'll try and get an interview with the newest head coach of the Halifax Wanderers. But some signings have been made, but also they sold a player. Our guy, Josh Healy, I saw this. I'm getting all my info from him first at Wanderers Notebook. Of course, you can find his website is hfxfootballpost.ca. He came on our show letting us know that the Wanderers agree to terms to sell Tiago Coimbra to IFK Göteborg. I mean, what is this? This is a guy that was a fan favorite. Everybody loved him, goal-scoring machine. And all my friends that know soccer, they just say, hey, look, that's just part of the business. That's how it works. And it's kind of like a stock market, I guess. You buy low, sell high. And I guess there was some value, and a lot of teams wanted this guy, and they probably couldn't say no to the roster. The only thing I don't like, Dayton, is that finances don't really get discussed publicly with the CPL. I would just love to know all the details. I'm very nosy when it comes to that in sports. And it's not like in hockey where we know, okay, this guy agreed to this deal for this many years. We don't really know what the exact exchange was unless we really dig deep. But they're going to have to find some offense elsewhere. Tiago Coimbra, no longer a member of the Halifax Wanderers.
Well, I think you want to know the details so badly, because you want to know what he took in place of leaving. Not to say that he left. He definitely took a better deal because it's the better move for him. But you want to know what he was offered. You want to know like the specifics, because obviously most sports, it's like, oh, this guy signed this amount for this term, blah, blah, blah. We don't know anything about this other than the Wanderers lost their probably top scorer. And now they have to go out and find another young guy who can fill the back of the net like Coimbra did.
You know, nominations for CPL Player of the Year, 64 appearances, 20 goals, 5 assists, 3 seasons in Halifax with the Wanderers. So obviously a big deal for him. People were aggressive, teams were aggressive, and they reached out. As you and I were discussing backstage, some international appearances probably helped put him on display. But hey, we move forward and we look at a signing that the Halifax Wanderers have made. And I'll tell you what, they've been making some moves overall. And like I said, this is a time of year where you look across the board and you say they're going to pick up a little bit of this, a little bit of that, going to lose a player as well, picking up a 5'8" winger from Spain, but last club was Creighton University in NCAA, Miguel Arilla, and he is a player that's going to bring a lot of talent to this team. We have some quotes. If we can read it here, it might be a little bit cut off, but he pretty much said this, is that, you know, I'm going to be a guy that can take players one-on-one. You know, I'm going to be someone that can come in right away. And you know, as we see from Vonnie Sartini, the head coach now, calling him very clinical, good on set pieces, brings experience. And as long as the cold weather doesn't do him any troubles, I think we'll be just fine with a player like this. So really good to see.
It's interesting seeing that he played for Creighton down in the NCAA. Usually that if you're looking at a young guy, he's 2003 born, so he's 2 years younger than me. He's probably around 22. You would think that he would have played with a a junior or like a semi-pro club overseas or in Europe or something. But no, he definitely took a different route than most people. Maybe education was pretty big for him, so he came over to the NCAA. But it's interesting to see the route that he took and how he's getting here. I know it's not usual for players, especially for players from overseas, to come to, I guess, the NCAA when you have pro clubs and junior clubs over there that are so spectacular. But it's nice to see, and maybe he'll be that replacement, or he can fill the role of Tiago Coimbra, at least somewhat up to Tiago Coimbra's standards.
And I think that when you look overall right now, it's probably a good sign for the CPL that this is happening. We've seen it happen with multiple players before, but as you mentioned, for him in his case, Spain to NCAA to Halifax, kind of an interesting, travel path to take. But it's a good sign for the Canadian Premier League that people are interested in going from NCAA as an international and then coming here, which is really good to see. But look forward to seeing what he brings to the team. And then, of course, have to keep shouting out Josh Healy. We'll get him back on before the show. We promise you guys. I know you all enjoyed it. One more rumor here. Wanderers set to sign Dutch midfielder Sven Zitman to the club. And this is another guy that's just absolutely clinical with the ball, take guys on one-on-one, but a very good team guy, can move the ball, very confident. And I think that this is a player that I think they really wanted to get their hands on. We're starting to see a new head coach, Sartini, making his stamp on the team. He's not just the head coach, he's the GM. He's making all the decisions for signings as well. And we're starting to see a little bit of this, a little bit of that, Dayton. He's starting to dip his toes in the water and say, it's time for me to build my team. Because I remember when Patrice Geyser first landed in Halifax, he picked up his guys. He figured out who he wanted. Well, now we're starting to see Ivani Sartini, these are my guys, and you're going to start building your team. Because, we see it happen all the time, like even across pro leagues and in the NHL, a lot of times when a new general manager takes over, they want to hire their own coach. Or when a new coach takes over, they want to pick up a couple new players or things like that. So we're starting to see the new head coach really start to put his stamp on the roster.
I've just looked up a little stat here, Andrew, and Zitman, his current market value, this is from transfermarket.com, 125,000 euros. So
okay.
I'm not a big I couldn't tell you the difference, like where that actually stands compared to other players, and like I'm also not dealing with euros on a day-to-day basis, but seems pretty good. If I was worth 125K, like, yeah, cool.
Well, I think it's at its absolute, peak compared to Canadian. I think it's like 1.6 right now, 1.55. Like, it's pretty tough. I got my first Europe trip planned actually for May, and not looking forward to going to the bank and having to get some euros there. So yeah,
1.62. You were exactly on.
There we go. Yeah. So yeah, it's because I've been dreading it, Dayton. That's why I know what the exact number is, but really looking forward to it, guys. And I'll tell you, we're going to try and get different people on. And of course, you guys can look forward to it. We'll try and get some player interviews. And of course, we'll try and get the brand new coach in Halifax to come into our studio and have a little bit of a breakdown and one-on-one or one-on-two interview with us as well. But that will do it. A long show for today. We didn't really plan on it being this long, but a lot of news to get to. We'll try and piece things up, do a little bit of slicing and dicing, and make sure you guys can get a little bit of this, a little bit of that from us. But great stuff from Jeremy. Always fun doing this with Dayton and Jeremy on Thursdays. That will do it for the show. Any final comments here, Dayton?
Where are you going?
Portugal.
Nice.
Portugal.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
And speaking of football, I might try and see a sporting Lisbon game or something like that. That's the sport guy in me.
You got to buy a jersey or something,
100%,
or a hat or something.
Just to see a game. Look, the Wanderers atmosphere is great. I've been to, I think, 2 MLS games, but just to be able to say I saw a soccer game in Europe would be pretty cool. So
yeah,
I got to try and do that. Yeah. Got to try and do that. All right. Well, that will do it for the show. If you guys are watching on YouTube, hit the like button. But more importantly, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. But make sure you're following us across TikTok and Facebook, Instagram. We're starting to pop on there a little bit, and don't miss out on all of our latest clips. We'll see you guys next time, same place on Halifax Sports Talk.